Good morning. Today, my team and I will be presenting our essays, our opinion essays, about who's responsible for disease prevention, the government versus family. First off, I will start with my own essay. I did my essay on the opinion that the government has to be responsible of preventing diseases from spreading amongst families. Why do I think this? I think mostly because of the World Health Organization, who which appoints the role of the government to support health, provide health services, and ensure these are accessible. They try to make sure that the government gets the services they require, and as well as producing the medicines, the vaccines that the population needs. Another argument that I thought of was that of the COVID-19 pandemic, since most of it was what the government ordered. They ordered people home. They ordered the vaccines, the experiments to make sure these vaccines work. And so I find that to be one of the many reasons why the government has to be responsible to prevent diseases and to make sure they get cured. Of course, the people can reject these treatments. They can reject the medicines, but overall, that I believe doesn't fall into the government's range of responsibility. I think it range much more into the people's individual responsibility. They get to choose. It's democratic. They get to choose if they want it or if they don't. In conclusion, the government has to take, like I said, the responsibility for the people's well-being. It provides the orders, the services that keep people safe and healthy most of the time. Um, and more than anything, they must also take the necessary measures to try and look for the health of its people, and in a way isolate them in the case it's a very dangerous one to prevent them from spreading.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Rodriguez, and now I will present my essay. I share the opinion with Said that it's the government's responsibility to take care of their people's health, even though we make our own choices and we choose to maintain healthy habits to prevent minor illnesses. It is responsibility of the government to create systems that supports people who need healthcare services, especially those necessary for survival. The government must improve the country's quality of life because the whole population should have well-being and easy access to healthcare services when needed, regardless of their economical state or where they live. It's the government's responsibility to provide um, healthcare for all their citizens. They also must work on promoting healthy habits such as making exercise or eating healthy by making like promotions and making nutritious food more accessible because for some people eating healthy can be expensive. They should also eradicate problems such as epidemics as well as diseases preventable through vaccination or simple treatment. And the government is obligated to make an extra effort since they are such a big group of people. They should encourage their population to take healthcare services, checkups, and vaccination campaigns and medical examinations to ensure that they will be healthy for a long period of time. And the government also should create laws and regulations with a solid foundation to promote personal responsibility for one's health. It's not just about medications or making them accessible. The government must also control that people take care of their own health, and they could also try to control the use of unnecessary recreational drugs that are harmful to the body to ensure that their citizens aren't using them to the point that they get like permanent dependencies. While it's the government's responsibility to make healthcare and potential cures for diseases accessible, it's our own responsibility to avoid falling into unhealthy habits. That's why, even though I believe it's the government's responsibility to control the health department in their own country, it should also rely on us to follow healthy habits.
Hello, my name is Hector Castro, and as the same as my classmates, I did my essay uh, giving the responsibility to the government. And even though people can make healthy choices, I explained that in my essay that the government has the bigger responsibility because only the government can create large programs that protect everyone, like vaccination campaigns, food safety rules, and public health announcements. And because without these policies, personal habits are just not enough. I also explained that healthcare access depends a lot on the government, and even though families can encourage good habits, they can replace doctors, technology, medical checkups, and stuff like that. Because when the government doesn't invest in public health, prevention comes much harder. So, with my essay, I conclude that mm, individual work and habits to work it helps, but the government is the one that has the main role keeping the population healthy because with that prevention works in a better way because the government leads people to make better choices about their health and to have better habits and promote a healthy culture.
Now to compare and contrast our own essays, I found one similarity and one difference between us three. Um, Starting with the similarities, I found that I spoke a lot about the medicine, the vaccines, the products and services the government gives us. While similarly, EC's also talked a lot about the vaccines, the medicines, and well, Hector also talked briefly about that. Um, on the differences, I used the example of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Organization of Health. While on the other hand, my classmates use much more investigation and personal experiences.
Another difference that I found between our essays was that while I spoke about nutritious food and making it more accessible, perhaps my classmates make emphasis on other topics related to health. I also mentioned the use of recreational drugs, while on the other hand, Said mentioned, for example, the COVID-19 pandemic. But at the same time, I mentioned vaccination and the government's responsibility on disease prevention, and that's a similarity I found between the three essays.
Another similarity I found is that we all argue in our essays that the government must lead public health efforts and its importance in provide services for the community and protect the population through policies, programs, medical support, etc. And one difference I found in our essays, well, in our work, is that we all use different evidence to support our arguments because uh, my essay focus on public policy, like the access to healthcare, medical technology, mm, and the prevention programs to the government. ECs emphasize on the food accessibility, the healthy habits, and the government's duty in that to regulate harmful substances like drugs. And Said uses the World Health Organization, and he used an example about the COVID-19 pandemic, and that's one difference I found.
These differences and similarities are an example of the way we see health in our lives. That's why it's so different from one another. Well, I mentioned nutritious food because it's something relevant in my life. On the other hand, Said mentioned COVID-19. Perhaps it could have impacted him significantly. And Hector mentioned more about vaccination and healthcare in general because he's interested in those type of things. That's why we make emphasis on different points.
Well, thank you for your attention. That would be all for our presentation.